Today, we're answering your questions, and they're all about different aspects of making offers and how to interpret the agent's price guide, or lack thereof. You know, if there's a price guide, do you offer more? How much more? Or less? We'll cover all of this and more in this episode.
Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to move it along and become homeowners. But most importantly, it is for you to become an educated home buyer.
I'm Megan and that was Veronica. We're both buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mum. But it's a good thing because between us we've got over 45 years experience to share with you and bucket loads of stories about avoidable mistakes. Together, we're going to make sure you get unbiased and real information you can rely on. Allow us to guide you on your home buying journey. We want you to become an educated home buyer so that you can stop looking for your first home and actually become a proud homeowner.
We've got loads of great tips for you in this episode, and if you'd like more useful tools, head over to the website homebuyeracademy.com.au, and there you'll get access to our free mini course, How to Price a Property Like a Professional. You will also find the holy grail of home buying education, Your First Home Buyer Guide, the online course for people who want to become educated home buyers. We created this for you to help you get on the right path to home ownership for your first home and beyond.
But before we get into the interesting stuff in this week's episode, we've got the boring bit, the disclaimer. You of course know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field who takes the time to understand your personal situation. We've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording. Things change rapidly, so always check with the relevant government authority and your trusted advisors to get the most up-to-date information.
Today we're talking about making offers. How much is too much or too little, and what happens after the offer is made. All right, Megan, do you want to kick off with our first question?
Yeah, so this has come from our Facebook group. So this is where people come and join to ask us questions that we'll actually answer for them. Now, of course, it doesn't go into as much detail as Your First Home Buyer Guide, the course, but it does give people a little bit of an idea of what to think about. So our first question comes from one of our Facebook group members in Melbourne. Now, they're getting ready to buy their first home this year, and they say, I know real estate agents here need to have a particular price or range for the property, but is it generally a rule that you should offer more than the range if you believe the range is reasonable? How much do people generally offer?
So let's just, before we get into sort of the common mistakes that so many buyers make, not just first home buyers, just a little bit of an explanation about how price guides are formed in places like Victoria and New South Wales and to some degree in other states, but not in Queensland.
Yes.
And that is...
Again, all different.
All different. So the agent will have put on their agency agreement with the owner, they will have put an estimated selling price, right? Now, it changes because there's different laws everywhere across the country, but generally there's a range and there's a strict guidelines as to how big that range can be. So, for example, if it's there's usually a 10% range. So that means the lowest price in this range, the upper price can be no more than 10% above that lowest price. So, for example, if it's $1 million to 1.1 or 900,000 to 990 and so on. And then the guide needs to be within that range. Now, in New South Wales, it can be a single price or it can be the range. I never see anyone quote the range, but I do see people quote an individual price. And if that guide was 1.1 or 1 to 1.1 that they put on the agency agreement, you can bet your bottom dollar they're going to put the guide of 1 million on all the advertising material. So that gives you an idea of where the agent is thinking, right? They're pitching at the low end and they've told the vendor to accept, 10% more. However, it's not set in concrete. Some properties are fantastic and they get lots of competition and it can go way over. Other times the agent actually gets it wrong and it's really worth 950 and they overquoted it. So one of the most common mistakes that all buyers make, and not just first home buyers, is using this agent's price guide as a basis from which to make an offer.
Absolutely. And as you say, it's different in each state, so make sure that you're getting the right information for your state. We're going to talk about Victoria and New South Wales particularly here. Veronica's great explanation about how that sort of comes about. And generally speaking, the agent should be using comparable sales as a way to inform their seller as to how to set that. So there is something, but you made a really important point there, and that is, often the agent will quote it a little low, and there is some psychology around that, particularly when it comes to auctions. And there is a saying in the real estate industry that is, quote it low, watch it go, quote it high, watch it die. So what that means is that they're putting some information out there to the marketplace that is drawing buyers in to get them excited about the property, because probably that property looks a little bit better than everything they've looked at in the price range, in the similar price range. And that gets people emotionally involved and interested in then pushing themselves, perhaps if it's an auction or if it's a multiple offer situation. So there's a lot of background to that, and we go into that in great depth in your first home buyer guide. But let's look at the answer to this question. The best way to go about this is to start with what the property is worth, not what the price guide is. You might put some parameters in to search on a portal, realestate.com portal or any of the other portals. That might give you a bit of an idea, but you need to then put the work in and do your own price research rather than relying on the agent's price guide. And we have a free mini course that actually teaches you how to do that.
We do, and we'll have the link is in the show notes, but if you want to remember it, it's homebuyeracademy.com.au/free course. So once you have worked out what the property is likely to be worth, so that's like market value for a property, you can then consider how this market value measures up against what the agent is guiding, right? If they're underquoting, which many do, let's face it, right? Then the amount over that guide will vary. Like it might be 10%, but it also might be 20% or anywhere between. In fact, in hot markets, I've seen it as high as 60% over. That's crazy.
That's insane.
And some of that might be they underquoted and some of that might just be hot market. It's hard to tell.
Could be the buyers that have pushed that price.
That's exactly right. But that's why it's so important for you to do your work and your research on recent sales and market value, because then you are able to sort of put aside what the guide is and make your own mind up and go in with an offer that is reasonable for the market. Because if it's low, they're not going to accept it, or another buyer can come in and compete with you. You know what I mean? So there's a whole bunch of stuff around making offers, which we'll get to in some of these other questions. But, this is the issue with trying to use or anchor your price to the agent's price guide.
And then apply a formula.
Well, that's it.
Below, 10% above.
It doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Yeah. Now, if they're quoting a fair price, it might be that other buyers have assumed it's overpriced, and you might get away with offering less, right? So, and obviously in the course, Your First Home Buyer Guide, we teach you how to come up with an offer strategy. And this is why we say that you will save way more than the cost of the course when you negotiate with confidence, because, the course costs just shy of $1,000. And honestly, you can blow that by not knowing how to negotiate and pitching your offer, anchoring it to the wrong thing, right? So the process, by learning it, helps you reduce your chances of missing out, but it also helps you avoid overpaying.
Absolutely. Such good advice, Veronica. Thank you.
Advice.
Excellent. All right. So question number 2 is, we've seen a property we like. Now, this is New South Wales this time. It's listed at a guide of $875,000 to $960,000 and has been on the market since October 2024. Now, we are currently in March. I've lost track of time because we've just had a cyclone in Brisbane and I actually don't know what day it is. But where are we, Veronica? We're in March.
I think the question was posted in February, but anyway, a few months later.
I digress. But we saw another similar property sold on the same street for $840,000 in the same month. Would it be fair to make an offer under this price guide? We are thinking the owner has not sold because they're possibly holding out for a better offer. Probably. Note, we are still yet to inspect it, but are thinking of making an offer if our due diligence checked out. Excellent work. Due diligence first. P.S. Sorry for the novel. That's how
That's not even a novel. God, some of these questions we get is very detailed. All right. It is really great that you're considering recent sales in coming up with the amount that you're prepared to offer, but I'd encourage you to look at more than one recent sale. And while that's a really good starting point, it might be an outlier and it might be a cheap outlier, right? So more data is always going to give you a greater confidence on value.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I guess, a few things, it's been on the market for a few months. That could be as a result of a number of things. Yeah, if everything else has been selling, then it could be due to being overpriced, as you've maybe guessed. It could be a whole lot of other reasons as well. Markets, people are a bit more attuned and astute about doing their due diligence. And if there is something that is really different about this property compared to the one that's sold for the 840, then maybe people are picking that up and adjusting their expectations for that reason.
Yeah, and I think too, the next step after you inspect it and do your own due diligence, as you've indicated, which is great. The next step is to ask the agent why they're asking that price when the one down the road only sold for $840,000, because their answer might actually give you some clues as to what you should do next.
Yeah, if the vendor's got high price expectations and isn't prepared to meet the market, it won't matter what offer you make. Like, you could offer anything you like, but if they are so set on that price, the only way you're going to buy that property is by paying too much. But if the vendor will meet the market, does that make sense? Like, if they have high price expectations and it's above, and you'll get some really good indications from the agent as to whether they think it's realistic or not. They won't tell you outright, but you get some really good indications from it. Then it may not be that the owners are prepared to meet the market.
And if it's not that unique a property, why would you pay someone more money than it's worth just because they think it's worth that money? And that happens. We see it all the time, right? But then sometimes some properties really do have something unique and the owner's holding out for more money, and you think, you know what, I really want it. It's unique for these reasons, and we're going to pay them a little bit extra. Even though technically on paper I don't think so, it's within the realms I can deal with that. But if it's not unique, no, but if, however, this owner will meet the market, but the agent isn't managing the campaign very well. See, this happens too. There is a chance that by making a low offer, you could kick off a slow negotiation process. Or it could be that the agent's exclusive agency agreement is about to run out and a new agent will be appointed, in which case the vendor does want to sell and a well-timed offer of $840 might snap it up.
That's such a good point, because often and also can be an opportunity at the end of an agency agreement. So in each state, the length of an agency agreement varies. So get your head across that. But if an agency agreement is coming towards an end, sometimes an agent can get very, very motivated to start generating offers to see if they can actually get that last minute across the line negotiation. So it actually can be a good opportunity where you've got a highly motivated agent, because they're going to miss out on all of their commission if that goes to another agency. You can actually work that angle to see if you can get a really good negotiation going and get some influence to bring the owner to where the data says the property is worth.
And certainly if a property has been on the market for sort of, 12 weeks or so, there's a very good chance that is nearing or even after the end of the agency agreement. They go into sort of like a I don't know, I can't remember what they call it, but there's it continues. The agent can still sell the property.
Open listing, we call it up here.
Yeah, it's not, it depends where you are, but in Sydney, in the olden days when I used to sell property, if the agency agreement expired, technically you should get them to sign a new one, but it's like it sort of carries over. It's like, well, I got this buyer and I introduced them during the agency agreement, and you can negotiate a sale sometimes after it and still get your commission. So it's all different rules, different places, and also could have changed since I was a sales agent. So don't quote me on that one.
True. Look, we host weekly campfires, and of course students run through all of these sorts of scenarios live on actual properties, because this is really tricky and not all agents follow the same playbook. So in those weekly campfire mentoring sessions, we're really asking the questions that we would ask agents to get our students to ask the right questions, get the right information. So, I love all of that. I love what we do with our students in Canada.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, these agents would know what's coming to them. They've got first home buyers asking really good questions.
And all about just uncovering the information they need.
So that they can make the offer with confidence. They're not leaving money on the table, or they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. All right, question 3. Is the price advertised on Domain, etc., generally above what they expect to get? I realise auction price guides seem to actually be below reserve. All right, so that's a question. Answer. Go, Megan.
Look, it used to be that private treaty asking prices were above what was expected. And I think people used to think, oh, gee, I'll offer 10% less and then you might meet halfway in the middle and, that kind of style of thing. That was before people understood and we were teaching people that you really need to work out what the property's worth, not use the price guide. But, in more in recent years across the country, asking prices are actually price guides, except in Queensland where you can't give a price guide. You either have an asking price or no price at all. So make sure you understand in your state which one applies. But they can be quite similar to auction price guides in other states, Veronica.
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days, except for in Queensland, of course, gone are the days where you have an asking price on a property and you think, okay, well, it's going to come in and offer a bit less than that, right? Nowadays, it is that there's guides on everything. It's like, so if they really think it's worth 1.1, the guide will be 1 million. And you go, back in the olden days, if you put an asking price of $1 million on it, someone would come in and offer 950. It's like, where did all this change? There was actually in Queensland, though, if somebody has an asking price of $1 million, what would you expect? I mean, would you see that as a guide, or would you see that as an asking price to negotiate down from?
I would see it as completely not worth my time and do my pricing analysis. There is no easy answer to that, right? Because we're still, for A-grade quality, non-flood affected properties, they are still rising. So even the weather events that occurred in March, we are still going to see quality assets that are non-flood affected continue to have a great deal of demand. So if an agent was to put an asking price on a property, they could get that drastically wrong depending on the quality of the asset. So I can't even give a guide as to whether I think that would be low or high, because sometimes we look at an asking price and go, that's cheap.
Yeah, in which case other buyers will be doing exactly the same thing, and they're doing that often to get offers. And then they make those people compete with each other. So it might be they call for a best and final and say, right, I've got 5 people all wanting to make offers. I want best and final by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or however they play that. So the question really is about, though, what's on the portals. Right, what's on the portals is as low as they can get away with. That's sort of mostly the bottom line. Which means that really the price is usually under what is expected, because they are trying to capture as many people looking in different price brackets. So they're going to, in just the same way, the price guide is going to err on the low side. What they put in the back end of the portal is going to be exactly the same. So some properties in the portals have a guide on them, others don't. But I can tell you in the back end, they all have a guide, because they need to have that range there, so that when you do your search, they come up and they will match according to the search, the price that you put into your search. But as Megan just said, it's really important that you form your own opinion on market value. It's really important. And our free mini course that we've already referred to really will help you with this. I encourage you to do it. It is free. What the hell are you waiting for if you haven't done it?
And I think, 20 minutes? I think it's 3 lessons, and I think it's about 20, 25 minutes.
Doesn't take long.
A huge amount of
And you get a spreadsheet that you can then use over and over again every time you're
downloadable tool.
Yeah, using evaluating a property.
Absolutely. Okay. So question number 4 from our Facebook group members is, how long would you wait before contacting an agent after an offer has been placed? And I think this is such a good question.
It's a really great question.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Okay. So before you make an offer, this is the thing we teach you in your first home buyer guide. There is a strategy that you need to be thinking about before you make an offer, right? And step one is working out what it's worth, right? But
due diligence,
what we do, all of that stuff. So when you're ready to make the offer, people make offers at the wrong stage all the time. They make them way too early. They make them without any real consideration. They make them anchored to the wrong amount of information. It's just
Remember when we had a student who said after he did the course, he realised he was doing step 7 and then he was going back to step 3 and he had all the steps out of order and he just kept getting it wrong. And when he put the steps in the right order, he got it right.
it works. So we really encourage you to ask the right questions of the agent before you make an offer so that you know what their process will be. You know, I go through this with my buyer's agents my new buyer's agents in my buyer's agent mentoring program as well, teaching them the process of working with agents to work out how are they going to run the offer. Because if you don't know that, then you don't know how to submit your offer. You don't know when to submit your offer, and they're all different. Exactly. They're all different.
They've got to comply with legislation, but the process that an agent goes through and also what the owner wants in the process can be quite different. You know,
For
an owner might be away for, and they just say to the agent, just gather the offers and we'll talk to you on that date.
Yeah, so you can't even buy it. Like, you know, these are all the different things that they'll do. They'll go, okay, well, thanks. And then nothing happens. You go, what happened there? You know, well, because you haven't asked them. You don't know what they're doing. I wouldn't know what they're going to do with my offer, right? They could shop it around every other buyer, right? They could find the vendor and find that they work in the mines or something and they're disappeared for, I don't know, how long do you go down a mine for? I don't know. But
sometimes they're not contactable for several days.
Yeah. So they could say, all right, well, I'm going to call a deadline tomorrow. They could in Melbourne, they'd call a boardroom auction. There's so many different things that they could do. And this is where buyers get unstuck because they make an offer and they think that the agent will just go and tell the vendor will give them an answer, they'll come back and tell them. It doesn't actually always work that way.
No, it doesn't. Now, if you've already submitted an offer, you'll need to go back a couple of steps and find out what their process is. So get on the phone, talk to the agent, confirm things in writing. You'll need to ask some questions. Some key questions. And those would be along the lines, and there's a lot of questions that we teach you to ask, but some of them will be, you know, when will the offer be presented? When will you give me feedback? You know, there's a lot of pre-offer steps that you should take. So if this one doesn't work out, you know, go back and do the steps in the right order.
That's it. So we really encourage you to do our course. All right. So we hope that these questions on offers have given you some insights into the tricky business of trying to work out what a property is, you know, what they're trying to get for it, what is it worth, how should we pitch that offer, how should we make that offer, what to expect once we've made that offer. It's complicated and there's a lot of variability in what happens. And that's why it's really important to get an understanding of that process for yourself and knowing those questions to ask so you can take the reins in these circumstances.
Absolutely. Now, if you haven't joined our Facebook group yet, just get in there. You know, these are the kind of questions. We only choose a few, but it's called Your First Home Buyer Guide Australia, and it's your opportunity to connect with us and ask us your questions. You'll get answers from us, which means you can be sure you're not going to get led down the garden path.
That's the point. We answer them. We don't actually let other people in the group answer them because that can really lead to some misinformation being shared. Now, a quick note, you might think that we cover everything that you need to know in these podcasts. So we've just touched the surface, scratch the surface here on the whole point of offers. Now, if you really want to be an educated first home buyer, you really need to learn all of the steps, how to do everything in the right order.
Yeah. Actually, I think the module on this is over an hour long. Now,
and don't be put off by that, by the way. It's
self-paced.
So valuable.
It's self-paced, and the amount of people in Campfire that say, look, I've gone back and I've done module blah, blah again, and they might have put it on 2 times speed.
Yep.
But, you know, it is a reference. You go back to each step in the process. It only costs $990, and you get direct access to us to help guide you through your negotiations. You can share the link of any property you're thinking of buying, and we can help you work through whether it's an A, B or C grade or an absolute no-go zone. Trust me, you'll buy better with our guidance and you'll overpay by a lot more than $1,000 if you don't know what you're doing.
In this episode, we've only touched on a tiny part of the huge amount of things you need to know to become an educated first home buyer. There is so much more for you to do.
You can learn all of the steps in the right order and avoid all of the mistakes that others have made in our 10-step online course for first home buyers.
If you'd like to learn more about the right process and avoid making rookie errors, become an educated home buyer. Head over to the website, check out your first home buyer guide, the course that we have created for you. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss an episode. And if you've liked what you've heard today, please give us an iTunes review. It helps other people find us. And of course, I know it's a bit cringy, but we're going to ask for 5 stars. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you found this really useful. And if you have, please share the love with others who you know are in the same boat. We'll be back next week with more priceless stuff.